Hey, how you doing? This is John, and welcome to John's Long Box. Can anybody hear me? Anybody there? Tommy, can you hear me? Tommy, can you see me? I'll filibuster like I normally do for a couple of seconds before I do anything. How you guys doing? I made the perfect pot of Tim Hortons coffee today. I see there's two people viewing. Could you just, hey, Kevin, how you doing? Kevin, I tried to reach out to you last night. I was wide awake, and I thought we'd do it like a spur of the moment live chat, but I guess you didn't get my message, and I finally went to bed. So Kevin, yeah, I'll try to uh, figure out a time that you and I could go live and talk. You got a lot of interesting things to talk about. I'm trying a different setup. So Kevin says everything sounds good. I get to sleep, Yeah, Bucky's here. All right, Bucky's here. I was waiting for Bucky. All right, we could begin. Bucky is here. Bucky, when are you going to come on my channel? You could teach me a thing or two about wrestling. Okay. All right. So I got a confirmation that everything's okay. Sounds good. I'm trying not my, I'm not using my phone today. Hey, Marcus Kellegrew. How are you doing? How you doing? Bucky is here. Kevin is here. Marcus is here. Okay. All right. Let's begin. Today we're looking at Dell Comics, a movie classic, Alexander the Great, the boy who conquered the world. I just have to laugh that they call him a boy. He just have to laugh. He was in his 20s. So could Alexander the Great? He was a wrestler too. Oh, yeah. What did they? Pancration. Pancration was the name of the ancient Greek style of fighting. That it involved. It was like a blend of yeah, it meant like all battle or something like that, but it was a mix of wrestling and fighting. So, and supposedly Alexander was a master at it. Um, Supposedly he was not too tall, so he had a low center of gravity, and he used that. He would get low, and he would fight. Supposedly that style of fighting was invented by the mythological figure like Theseus. Because Theseus was supposed to be short also, and he would squat down low and get his center of gravity and couldn't be knocked over. Theseus realized that all the big, tall guys would stand up straight and try to beat the crap out of him. So he would get down low, and I don't know if that's true or not, but anyway. So this is Dell Comics. Dell Comics at one point was the biggest comic book company in the world. And then now it's gone, and I really don't know much about it. It was gone before I think like a few comic books were coming out when I was a kid, but for the most part, Dell Comics were like old fashioned comics even when I was a kid. And this as you can see over here, this is issue 688, and it still goes on. So it's been around for a long time, and it was hard to find the title. Yeah, Dell had the Disney license. You're absolutely right. They had a lot of Disney comics. Great company. I bought a book. It's right over there, a hardcover book about the history of Dell. My problem is I buy books just like I buy comics, and I stack other things on top of it, and I forget about it until I think about it. And then when I think about it, I'm usually nowhere near the book. So I'm going to take it out and start reading it. Dell. The name of this series, I had to look it up to log it into my data bank. It's called Four Color Comics, and yet it says it nowhere on the comic itself. It doesn't even say it in the indicia. So this is Four Color Comics number 688, Alexander the Great, the boy who conquered the world. And these are stills from the Richard Burton movie. This is Richard Burton. Richard Burton's an actor that I really, really like. Now, there's no credits in the comic itself. Kevin seems to be just a knowledge of stuff. Dell didn't even need to observe the comics code. President Henry Delacourt said, "I have a seal of approval. His name is Walt." Oh, okay. I'll talk about that at the end of this. Both because that made a pledge of a clean. Yep. It might as well talk about it now. But here on the back, this I pledged to Can you read that? A pledge to parents. The Dell trademark is and always has been a positive guarantee that the comic magazine bearing it contains only clean and wholesome entertainment. The Dell Code eliminates entirely rather than regulates objectionable material. That's why when your child buys a Dell comic, you can always be sure it contains only good fun. Dell comics are good comics is our only credo and constant goal. Yep. So they didn't. Marcus. Yeah. And what does Bucky say? Dell and Gold Key were mainly okay. Yeah, I got a 4-issue series called Dell Superheroes. That was original characters. I didn't read it yet. I kind of forgot about it. There's glare on this. It'll go away when it's not the. So that's what Glare did. That's what Glare did. That's what Dell Comics did to avoid the Comics Code Authority. Not and I know this is controversial, but some of the best mainstream comics of all time were made under the Comics Code Authority. So I'm I'm not too opposed to it. Art through adversary. Sometimes, if you have like rules and regulations to what you got to do, it comes out a little bit better. See, DC hired an in-house psychiatrist to approve comics, but still have to go to court. Yep. And I want to do a video on Frederick Worth one of these days. I'm still gathering up some information. So let's talk about this particular comic. It's like I said, it's 4-color comics, issue number 688, Alexander the Great. Now I got this because I'm a history major. I love Alexander the Great. I at one point I was about halfway through writing a script, my first draft of writing a script of an Alexander the Great movie, and then Oliver Stone movie with what's his name, Colin Firth, not Colin Firth. What's the guy's name? The same guy who played Bullseye was announced, and I was like, oh god, and I put it away and I never looked at it since. So maybe it's time to revisit that, but I just always been fascinated with Alexander the Great. What started me on my obsession with Alexander the Great was The Watchmen, believe it or not. When Ozymandias was talking about Alexander the Great and how that inspired him to become like the villain Ozymandias. I was like, wow, that is so cool. And plus I've always heard the name before. So I kind of like bought a bunch of books, read all about him, became obsessed about him, went to college and became a Greek and Roman ancient history major because of comic books. Comic books have always been part of my life, always influenced my life. So I was I was watching a live stream with Rob Geronimo while he was painting, and he started talking about this comic. But I was told that the art was by John Buscema. Now, the art is not by John Buscema. Okay, I might as well talk about the credits. The script is by Paul S. Newman, not the actor, but I guess he wrote for Dell. But the pencils are by Alberto Giolitti, and inks by Alberto Giolitti. But it says, I'm looking at the history of Dell right now. The story, Stephanie Pratt notes that in the French magazine Backup, number 14, credits the pencils to John Buscema. But the book is not by John Buscema. According to the John Buscema checklist compiled by Jim Van Ducor and Michael Malaya. So in one magazine, this was erroneously credited to John Buscema. I'm not trying to make fun of or point any blame to Robert Geronimo, but I still probably would have got this comic even though it wasn't John Buscema. It's really good. All right, so let's look at what Bucky has to say. The Frankenstein got to be, even though they couldn't do horror stories, Prize did a yeah, and they got around the Comics Code Authority by bending rules. Like they did Morbius, the living vampire, because he wasn't the undead. The Comics Code Authority said you couldn't have the undead, so they got around that. And I don't know how they ended up having werewolves, and they got around having zombies by making up the word zoombies, in Marvel, and they got around saying mafia by saying magia, so there's always ways around. So let's open up this comic now. So, oh, cool. All right. I just woke up and the caffeine hasn't activated my brain yet. So look at this. Look at this. Yes, yes. Marcus, Bruce Hewitt did do Dell adaptations. Yes, yes, he did. I think even Kirby did. I'm probably wrong about that. Excuse me. I just enjoy my coffee. The Empire of Alexander the Great. I love this. So over here we have Greece. And for those of you who do not know, Greece is the word. It's got groove. It's got feeling. And for the longest time, I forget exactly how many centuries, the Greeks were always like threatened by the Persian Empire. And here's Iran over here, ancient name Persia. And Philip, it'll show the history, but Philip conquered mostly Greece, and people just like, oh, Alexander, he conquered barbarians. Philip conquered Greece. So it just shows you Greeks are Greek-centric or Hellenic-centric. But look at this. He went all the way over here, and he would have continued. He would have continued if his soldiers didn't rebel against him. By the 70s, the Comics Code was weakened. Lex Luthor from DC also looked up to Alexander the Great. Yeah, because Lex Luthor is Alexander, and yeah. And what is conventionality belongs to yesterday? Okay. All right, so from Greece to powerful Persia, across the continent to India, he marched his mighty armies, always seeking new worlds to conquer. And here is the indicia. I'll bring it up over here. Alexander the Great. I love it. It says Alexander the Great, number 688, published by Dell. It doesn't say anything about 4-color comics. Believe me, I had a conniption. How's that for I had a conniption trying to find out the title of this comic so I could log it to my database. So just look at this page over here. We have Greek, in the year 356, Olenthos, the great great Greek city of Athens is aflame. The mighty Macedonian barbarians come, and here comes Philip, and that's Philip up here, and he's, he conquers Athens. He says, free them. Why we free them? He goes, because they could do this, no harm, free them. He's like, what are you talking about, free them? What they're gonna fight us again, which is the truth. Throughout the whole story of Alexander the Great, there's always stories of every time Alexander would defeat like he was always coming close to fighting Darius. And, some people said that they actually did meet. Some people say that they never did meet. I don't know. I am of the opinion that they never actually met face to face, but I could be wrong. Robert Geronimo probably knows more than that. But he always captured like their advisors stuff, and there was always Athenians in that group trying to get Darius to defeat Alexander. So, and one of the ancient words for Iran besides Persia was Medes. So people who are Medians were people that were compromising, working with the Medes. So that was originally a derogatory term. You're being a Median, I heard they got to do Werewolf Comics to do a man named Marvel. At least that's what I heard. Yeah, I heard that too. I don't know if the code was created by comics themselves, not the government. Yes, because the movie industry, Hollywood, got regulated by the government, and the comics people knew that was coming. That the government was going to come over and take a heavy hand to the comic book industry. So they did a preemptive strike and did it themselves before the government. You really don't want the government get involved and regulating your industry. Something as harmless as comic books, you know what I mean? You really don't want that. I'm from the government. I'm here to help you. So this guy over here, this nameless guy, is arguing with Philip over here. We got to defeat the. Ever since we left Macedonia, our goal has been Athens. Now you hesitate. Why? Once word reaches Athens of our victory here will be there'll be an Athenian behind every rock in that pass. Do you love Athenians more than you love ours? Then there's a little bit of like fighting among his soldiers. Notice there's no background. There's just dust over here. So Philip is breaking up the fight. I like what he says. He goes, the Athenians are right. If we sack Athens, then that'll prove to Greece that we are barbarians. We're not barbarians. Philip is saying that we are uniting all of Greece into one big, strong power, into one big kingdom, so that we'll be strong, so we won't be threatened by Persia. He goes, we are the opposite of barbarians. He goes, once we start for Athens, every Greek will defend it. Athens is not a city, it's an idea. Let them wait by the pass till they rot. We will march into Athens, we'll be welcome. He goes, so Philip is saying, like, we're conquering, but what we're really doing is we are uniting Greece. Okay, so a little bit of history lesson. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just trying to wake up. The little bit of a history lesson now. Greece, besides Greece being the word, besides having groove, it's got feelings. Greece was a collection of city-states. It wasn't united. It wasn't a country. Greece was a culture. It was a collection of independent city-states. So the Athenians didn't consider themselves Greeks. They considered themselves Athenians. The Spartans didn't consider themselves, we all know about the Peloponnesian Wars. They fought. So, the Thebes would fight with Athens and things like that. So what happened was Athens emerged as a leading naval power. Sparta were a bunch of landlubbers. If Sparta got a navy, they probably would have kicked butt. But Sparta was a land power. Athens was a sea power. And Athens started, what did they call it? The Archaean League. And what they did was they took like taxes from all the city-states, and it went to Athens, and then Athens would build ships, and it would patrol the Aegean Sea and protect the cities from pirates and things like that. So Athens became a power. And then a lot of people would get mad. Why am I paying money to Athens? Blah, 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 blah. But it wasn't, so that was the closest they got to being united. But they were fighting each other. In D&D terms, they were chaotic good. You know what I mean? They were chaotic good. Now, Darius the Great and before that Xerxes, and they united Iran, which was Persia, and Medes, and they would it became an empire, it became a kingdom, it became united, and it was strong enough to fight the Greeks. So this is what Philip sees the writing on the wall, that it's only a matter of time before the Persians come back. Now remember, the Spartans at Thermopylae happened already. I forget exactly how many years ago that was, but that happened already, and they thinking like it's only a matter of time that it happens again. So in a way, some people say what Philip and Alexander, they were the bad guys, they conquered. It depends on your point of view. Philip is looking at this as a means of survival. This is a way to survive. The Greeks are living on borrowed time. So in order to unite the Greeks to survive, he's saying to punish Athens, which is considered like the high point of civilization, democracy, philosophy, art at this point, to sack it would prove to the other Greeks that they're barbarians and no worse than the Medes, the Persians. So this is like far-sighted thinking at this point. And this sets an example for Alexander, as we'll see later. So anyway, so now hail Philip the Conqueror. This is Philip's wife. So this is Pella. I don't know. I just love whatever we talk about history, and I remember just in history class, kids would go, "Do we have to remember names and dates?" And I'd always be like, "That's like asking if we're doing math. Do you need to know numbers?" Yes, you need to know names and dates. That's history. But just boring memorization of names and dates is meaningless. Like I had a teacher in 10th grade. Can you hear me? Because I'm making myself a cup of coffee. I had a teacher in 10th grade that just listen. History is the greatest story ever, and he just told story after story after story. He would write the names and dates on the board. But for the most part, he just told history as if it was a story, and I'll never forget that. So yeah, you need to know names and dates. So anyway, Pella is the capital of Macedonia, and here he is. Philip, come see your son, and this is little baby Alexander. And he's like, look how strong he is. And then these are the stories that come up around the birth of Alexander. Listen to it. Nectembus, our Egyptian soothsayer, foresees for him. There is the signs of the greatness of his birth. Quakes and storms shook the earth in Asia. The temple of Ephesus was struck by lightning. 2 eagles perched on the roof of the queen's chamber, and Alexander was born to rule 2 worlds, Greece and Asia. Is this all true? Who knows? It's a lot of fun stuff. And years later, I love this. They're in Greece and they got this African lion. If he was hunting lion, it was most likely like a smaller mountain lion, but whatever. It makes for an exciting tale. I just made another cup of Tim Hortons coffee on my second cup. Oh, Bucky is agreeing. I can hear you. History is my favorite subject, so I'm all in. Yeah. History is, that's me. I'm a history major. I love history. So he's throwing spears at the lion. And I love this. They draw him to look like. I love this movie. I even love the Oliver Stone movie for all of its flaws. But but I just have to laugh. Richard Burton with the blonde wig on, and he kills the lion. So Alexander fights a lion by himself, and he's talking to he's brought to the great. Yes. So this is Aristotle. Aristotle, it was Alexander's teacher. And one of my favorite stories about Aristotle is before a lesson, Aristotle told Alexander to give an offering of incense to the gods. And Alexander went and started to sprinkle incense onto the what is it called? The censer, a brazier, or whatever that you burn the incense in. And Harold said, not so much. This is expensive. You can't afford to waste this. And Alexander, in typical stubborn kid, poured more in. And then later on, when Alexander conquered the city where that incense was made or extracted or grown or whatever it is, he sent he goes, here you go. This is payback for the incense that I burnt, your incense that I wasted. And he sent them like 2 tons of incense, which was expensive. So basically he paid him, made him a millionaire, for but that's true Alexander style. So this is Aristotle. Plato, we all know Plato, and then why am I blanking on the names? Robert Geronimo, jump in the chat and help me out. Robert Geronimo, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, he's the creator of Blood Realm, Alternative Comics Blood Realm. He's also an art professor. So he's a major history guy. 3 panels to kill that lion. 3 panels, a whole page. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 panels to kill this lion. By himself. So this is Alexander. That's Philip. They're talking, and this is saying that that there's revolts in Greece. So Philip has to go back down to fight in Greece proper because there's revolts in Greece. So he's appointing Philip as his regent. You're gonna rule here in Macedonia. So Aristotle's teaching him how vast is the empire. Look at that. They make him look like Richard Burton over here. And I love this panel. Yes, this is more than an empire. Persia is a colossus. To rule it would require the patience and wisdom, but first it must be conquered. And will my father leave anything for me to conquer? So he's actually he doesn't look that strong. What's funny? I always pictured Alexander the Great to look like. Oh wow, John Porton has a great comment. One of the greatest collections on YouTube. It's a real shame we can't get some of these gems reprinted. Are you talking about Dell Comics? John, are you talking about Dell Comics? Yes, again, I said at the beginning that Dell Comics just kind of passed me by, and now as an adult, I'm starting to realize what a great company it was. So, so Philip was conquering Greece and uniting Greece, and if you're Greek, that's the entire world. The rest of the world is barbarians, and to the Greeks, barbarian meant you didn't speak Greek. So if you didn't speak Greek, you were barbarian, because to the Greeks, anything that wasn't Greek, it sounded like they would just say bar, 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 bar. So it's a derogatory term making fun of your language. Barbarian. And so if Philip succeeds in conquering all of Greece, what's left for Alexander? You know, just conquer barbarians. So he's tell him patience, and he does his training. Little montage over here, and you know, in the hills of Greece, the Macedonian forages. So that and it's not all fun and games. They're showing you that Philip's army is going and taking food and sheep from the local people because they need food. So and that causes Athens to revolt again. Men of Athens, free men, were finally risen in Greece and called a halt to Philip's tyranny. The hunters have become, you know what I mean? It's just one of those things. Philip had noble intentions, but the path to hell is paved by good intentions. So the people are getting tired of the Macedonian army, looting. It was just the way it is. So now they're fighting again. The army's coming through a pass. The landslides. Philip's fighting. Blah 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 blah. And so what's going on now is Philip needs to divide his forces to suppress the Greek revolts and to continue the conquests. So it's funny. I skipped this entire page. This page got skipped, but so what's going on is now he's saying, Alexander, you stay down here, you rule. He's thanking Greece, and now what happens is Philip immediately goes and puts down a local revolt. And Aristotle's telling him, your father didn't tell you to do this. So this is untried Philip. I forget what he is. He's like in his early 20s, and I love that they call him a boy, but he's in his 20s, and he's an adult. And he goes and he puts down this revolt. Now, what I think is funny and is look at this. First off, Alexander the Great and the Macedonians, they conquered the world on ponies. They didn't have full horses, and everybody always draws big horses or puts them on horses. I'm waking up now, so I'm getting a little bit more historically accurate. And they ride. So Alexander rode a pony. And what did they do at this point? They had what they called the Greek phalanx. And the Greek phalanx was, you see this shield? It was a yard wide. So it was 3 foot wide. It's called the hoplon. And they were called hoplites. And they would line up. The phalanx means fingers, and they would line up like fingers. And then you would have a shield in front of you, So your shield would protect you and part of the guy to your right. And then that guy's shield would protect the rest of himself and then part of the guy to the right. So you would have to train to trust your partner. And that's what the Spartans did. The Spartans trained and trained and trained. So whatever you advanced, you always had a tendency to move to your right to get covered under your partner, you guy next to your shield, or maybe it was the left. I forget what it was, but they couldn't help it. Psychologically, the soldiers would always slant, and the generals would use that to break the hoplites. Once you broke through the phalanx, that was it. They were defeated. So that was what so one group of hoplites would crush into another hoplite, and they would have their spears overhand and poke each other. That's why they wore these big bronze helmets. And poke each other until somebody would fall down. And once you broke the phalanx, that was it. You would rout them. You didn't have scenes like this. This is warriors. This is how Homer would describe a fight. Achilles just riding in his chariot, almost like a taxi cab into the enemy lines, jumping off his chariot, then fighting one-on-one. And that's the way they always do it in the movies. I think the 300 was the first time they actually showed like semi-proper Greek techniques of fighting. This is the kind of stuff I wanted to talk about with this comic book. A little bit, comic books and history. Another sip of perfectly made Tim Hortons coffee. So this is just artistic license. So what but the Spartans, they would train and train and train to go forward. They would train and train and train to go forward because, well, Alexander had they took they remember Alexander. By the time of Alexander the Great, he never conquered Sparta. And that's like Spartan propaganda. You see, Alexander never conquered Sparta, but the truth is he didn't have to conquer Sparta. By the time Alexander came around, Sparta was a backwards hillbilly country. They were rigid. Their means of fighting was outdated, and they were worthless. Athens was the place. Once they conquered Athens, the rest of Greece had to fall in line. So Sparta was in the decline at this point. But the Spartans were trained from 8 years old to maintain discipline. They didn't veer. They didn't slant. And that's why they were unbeatable. That, and they had endurance. So Alexander knew his history, and that's so his professional soldiers did that. So now he puts down this rebellion. Everybody's like, Alexander, and Aristotle's less like, well, your dad's not going to be too happy. You're splitting the troops, and that's exactly what's happened. He goes, and the news. Oh, this is a funny story. When he fought the Hillmen, he fought the Gauls. They had the dreaded cart attack. So what they did was Alexander moved to a field, and then there was a hill, and the I forget the name of the people, but they took like carts and they filled them with stones and released the carts, and that was this crushing, devastating sneak attack that they used to devastating effect on other less disciplined troops. And the soldiers would put up their shields and then just get crushed, because each one of these carts would be a couple of 100 pounds, and it would just rout the phalanx, and then they would just come in with their spears and attack. But what did Alexander's guys did? They all lined up. He knew about the dreaded cart attack, and then at the last minute, they just and let the carts run through, came back and crushed them. That was their one. They were one-trick ponies. I just always thought that was funny. So now Felix and Alexander, they're fighting. And there's a lot of stories of Felix and Alexander fighting. They were both headstrong, great leaders. We would still be talking about Philip the Great if not for his son Alexander, So now Philip's fighting the Athenians. They're kind of getting the phalanx right over here, but they would line up in lines. I think the Romans had the square shields. I think the Greeks at this point still had hoplons. Maybe I'm wrong. They definitely didn't have horses. They had ponies. And what the horses did was just so that the commanders could ride up and down and give orders. And I'll talk a little bit more about Alexander's use of the companion cavalry. And you see, they always show this. They can't resist showing like one-on-one. This is from Homer. The Iliad and the Odyssey, because Homer really didn't understand the battle tactics either. And he was a poet. What does John say? Dell Comics today should be owned by Penguin Random House. Yeah. I don't know. That's something to look up is who has the rights to all of these wonderful comics. So Alexander, and this is true, that Alexander was always in the front. He was always fighting himself. Alexander, he didn't wear a crown when he became the king. He just wore like a circuit of gold on his head, just so people would know that, he's the king. But there's always these stories of people just going into his tent and arguing with him and yell at him, because the Macedonians, they didn't really have all of that. He didn't always have that pomp and circumstance. The Macedonians didn't stand for it. So, that they're fighting through the pass. Alexander wins, and then Alexander goes, no, Philip and Alexander, but Alexander is making a name for himself. So now, Philip now is starting to realize that Alexander is got some talent. He's a good commander. The people like him. And, they go into Alexander and Philip's ride into Athens, and now they're telling that we're going to go into Persia itself. We're going to go punish the Persians, you know. And they so this was Pausanias, Philip Alexander. He was exiled from Macedonia from his disloyalty, and see, this is just shows you how like the court of the Macedonians kings was. You know, when we think of kings, we think of like Elizabethians or like you know, even Rome. But at this point, it was just like they understood one person was the leader, but it was kind of like first among equals. You know, the Macedonians didn't go for that pomp and circumstance. Philip and Alexander, at least, they would eat with their troops. They would ride with their troops. They would fight with their troops. When they were going through the desert, Alexander made a big show of not drinking water until everybody else got to drink first, and he would drink last. You know, because he, you know, that's just one of his things about leadership. So anybody could just walk up to Philip, anybody could just walk up to Alexander, and then Pausanias walks up and kills Philip. And then, you know, there's a battle over here, and you know, a life. So, and then they kill Pausanias, and now he is the king. Now there's a lot of like scandal about this. Now, some people say, I don't know, I wasn't there, but I love the I love all the gossip and intrigue, the court intrigue. You know, some people say that I can never say his name. Pausanias and Philip were lovers, and he was a jilted lover. You know, some people say that Alexander paid him to kill Philip, and he guaranteed that he would leave. You know, because Alexander was getting worried that his father was too powerful, that was leaving him with nothing else to do. I don't know. I wasn't there. These are all great stories, but I don't know. But now the result is the same. Alexander is now the king. So he's giving his tribute to Zeus. This is his mother Olympias, who is played by what's her name, and Angelina Jolie in the movie. Now she was I thought that was a great choice to play her in the movie, because she was arrogant. She was, you know, they're making her look like a nice little housewife over here, but she was like a driving force in Alexander's life, to the point where she started telling Philip that Philip wasn't the father, that Zeus was really the father, that Zeus came to her in the form of a snake, and blah 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 blah. So she was just like a driving force. Tell Alexander, you must succeed, you must succeed. So now, you know, he's going off to fight. And I love this. You see how the sails are all white? The Greek sails, they were very painted. They were very conspicuous. They were, you know, they were works of art. Just like those Roman and Greek statues. They were fully painted. You know how we paint our war miniatures? They're not, you know, they don't look like this. Our miniatures don't look this. Like they should be fully painted, but time has worn off the paint. So now we always think of like Rome and Greece as like stark white marble, but no, everything was fully painted. The sails were painted, the ships were painted, and now he's riding off. So what does he do? He's crossing the Dardanelles, is that what it's called, into Turkey. And when he gets into Turkey, he throws a spear and he claims all of Asia. You know, ta-da, nice little ritual. And I just love that. You see, we got Greek soldiers with Darius the Great, you know, telling them Alexander's plans, the mediators, as they were called, mediators. They were sympathetic to the Medes. All right, let's look at Bucky says, I think Dark Horse or Image has some of Dell's original characters. I don't know. I would be right. Garments, am I right? Okay. I wonder how Alexander thought about Randy Savage. What a beautiful book. Yes, John Porton, I totally agree. This book was worth it. When I saw Robert Geronimo having a copy, I didn't know it existed. And now, like a child, I was like, now I want it. And he pointed out that it was on sale on eBay. There's a couple of copies on eBay. There's a copy like for $5 that it's kind of beat up. And I paid like $50 for this, because if I'm gonna get it and I'm gonna have it, I want it. This is in really good shape. I can't complain about the shape of this. So now they're planning a counteroffensive to Alexander. So now they're glossing it over because they spent a lot of time like with Alexander's origin. So we're about 3/4 of the way through the book. So this is the Battle of Granicus. Forgive me for the names of these cities. Now, what was happening is, so here's Greece, here's Turkey over here. So Alexander is making his way through Turkey. This is Persia. Look at all this territory. So Alexander comes up here, conquers, comes down, and then comes back and makes his way like that. So that was the path that he took. So he's trying to conquer Turkey. Now, he's got a huge land force, and he's got the skills, he's got the know-how, and he's got the loyalty to back this all up. And believe it or not, Turkey, when we think of Greece, we think about Greece as just the country of Greece. But at this point, Greece, like I said, Greece was a culture, the Hellenistic world, Hellene, from Helen of Troy, the Hellenes, as the Greeks didn't call themselves Greeks. The Greeks called themselves Hellenes. I don't know. I think Graecia was the name of the land, but whatever. So the Hellenistic world, a lot of them resented being ruled by the Persians. So they aided him and gave him food and gave him, and they kind of like joined him and fortified his back. So he had, he didn't have to worry about being attacked from the rear. But what he did have to worry about was Alexander didn't have a sea fleet. So I can't remember the name of the general. But the general was like, oh man, Alexander's unbeatable on land. But what good are troops if he doesn't have supplies from rear supplies? So he would go and just defeat the Persian. I think his name was like Memnon or something like that. He would just try to take out his supply from behind from the sea, and that was working for a while. So Alexander realized he had to go and conquer some ports, and or it was all off. So I love this. They're just stabbing on horseback. Yeah, Memnon. Yeah, So ask for quarter. No, we pledge not to fight. So you're a traitor. Blah 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 blah. They're fighting. So now the Macedonian fight closes in on the grim brand of Greek mercenaries. So the Persians hired Greek mercenaries, and again, they're glossing over some of the great fights. When Alexander attacks the coastal cities to assure himself supply ports in Asia, when Miletus and I can't pronounce these, and Miletus resist siege engines, and rams batter the walls. But they're raging at the lake, and Miletus falls, and now he makes it to Gordium, the capital of Phrygia. This is the famous Gordian knot. There was a knot over here that was tied to this chariot. Oh, you can't see. And they, whoever could undo this knot would be the king. So Alexander couldn't do it, but everybody's watching him. He can't walk away in defeat. So really in frustration, he just hits it with the sword and cuts it and goes, yay, He also goes to the Sibyl, the oracle in Libya. And he's proclaimed the son of Zeus. They don't show it in the comic, but the historical Alexander, they said that one of his eyes was weak, so he would constantly tilt his head, and so he was kind of short. He had like blondish hair, blue eyes, which I'll come back to, and he would tilt his head and talk to you because one of his eyes, I think, was damaged in a fight. So he kind of has this like cool swagger going on. And once he was declared himself as the son of Zeus, he started wearing, I told you he wore like a little diadem, a little band around his head, but he had horns on it. So Alexander had like ram horns, and he was trying to play up the fact that he was of divine origin. So I just think that's so cool looking. Who are the Persians, you may ask? Is this a legit question, or is this like a riddle or something? I don't understand. I see Marlon Brando. Yeah, a young Marlon Brando would have been perfect. You know who I see? Not the fish autocorrect. All right. I always pictured like Kurt Cobain. I think Kurt Cobain would have been a perfect Alexander. Kurt Cobain. Now Alexander had a if I remember correctly, he had a brother named Pythagoras, not Pythagoras, Ptolemy, and he had a sister named Cleopatra. Keep that in mind. Okay. So there was a city of Tyre that was okay. Let's go back to the map. Again, this comic is glossing over everything, but over here, Tyre, if you could see it right here. Can you see it's focusing? See, between Lebanon and Israel, Tyre. And Tyre at that point was on an island. And Philip Alexander knew that that if that island remained unconquered, they would have ports, they would have food, and and they could just come and attack him wherever he want. And it was undefeatable. So what did Alexander do? He literally got his whole army to build a jetty out to Tyre, and then rolled out his siege engines and conquered it. To this point now, Tyre is now part of the island. Another thing Philip Alexander did, he had to get to Thebes because Thebes was in revolt. This was back before he left, and there was something like he wouldn't make it there in like 9 days or something like that by March. So everybody expected him to be there in 9 days. What he did was he had his army carve steps into like a rock mountain, the Great Stairway, and they marched over this mountain, and they showed up in like 3 or 4 days, and it took Thebes by surprise and leveled it to the point where like Thebes wasn't a power after this. He just destroyed. He didn't have time. He was being pressed. It was one of the rare cases of like just crushed and put down the rebel. But it's not in this comic. Population Tyre is. I don't understand these comments. Population Tyre is strong, bad, nearby. I don't know. I feel like I had a stroke. I can't understand what the last couple of comments are asking me. So anyway, is this what it's like to be king? You know, now he's got great food. He's got tables and silks. And who is this? This is Roxanne. Roxanne is the daughter of Darius. So at this battle, Darius was actually leading the troops. Darius got away, and Alexander conquered and took the cities. And one of his trophies was Roxanne and Darius's mother. So they're begging for mercy. And I like this. Get up. I came to destroy Darius's army, not his family. And so now he's checking out Roxanne, and she was played by Rosario Dawson in the movie. Okay, all right. A little baffled. Okay, good. Pardon my cough. So now, you know, he treats the royal family very well. And so now Darius is suing for peace. Darius, king of the kings, kingsman of the gods, offers Alexander half of his empire to rule jointly with him in exchange for peace. And why is Alexander in bed? He was stricken with this illness that would just put him in bed for a long time. You know, what's that? It would just wreck him. And he would lay in bed until he was strong enough to get out. And he tried to keep it secret from his soldiers, as you can imagine. So from his bed, he was ruling. So there would be times when Alexander would just like sulk in his tent, but what he was really doing was recovering from his illness. Now, I heard that scholars think that it was malaria. That at the time they didn't have the medicine for malaria, so like he would recover from it, and then he would succumb to it, and then he would recover, and it eventually killed him at the age of 33. So Alexander refused. So learning of Alexander's refusal, Darius assembles a huge army across the Tigris River at Galgamea. They come from every nation. So this is the biggest army ever yet. Strong. Okay. Strong is a character from the Homestar Runner web Population Tyre as part of the song. Okay. All right. I'll take your word. Strongman is a character. He's a mass wrestler. Okay. All right. I'll take your word for it. I have no idea what you're talking about. All right. So now at this point right over here, this is the largest army ever assembled. There's like 1 million men. And Darius has his personal army of the immortals, 10,000 men. And, you know, that's his elite. Alexander has the companion cavalry led by Parmenio. That's his thing. Oh, and I wanted to talk about tactics. So from Thebes Thebes had an army called the Companions, and the Companions. Now, I don't know if this is true or not, but this is the legend that nobody would fight as well as like a couple lovers. So it was supposed to be like two men would face back to back. Now, some people say that they were, lovers. Some people would say that they were, literally blood family, and some people say they would just train together, that they were friends. So they would whatever but the two, so one guy would face front and one guy, and that's the way they would have like a double hopline, and they were devastating. The Companions, the gold, yeah, they were called the Companions, and companion meaning with bread. They would break bread together. They were basically became family, and they were led by Epimenides. And Epimenides, he would have a rectangle that would be the hop line, and then he would put a bunch of guys over here, and it was called the Epimenides hammer. So when the two armies would clash, boom, the heavy side would keep pushing and then spread around and envelop the army, and it was a devastating attack. So Alexander would do that. He would have his phalanx, and then he would have two flanks of cavalry. So they would clash. There would be two rectangles, a row of soldiers. They would smash into each other, and then he would have the companions that would envelop you like a horseshoe. And he was never defeated, So he had respect for all these people. So, and he defeated the companions to the last man, and then he wept on their graves, because he had such respect for them. I've heard of the immortals wasn't the rule. You couldn't be in this unless you had a child. Yes, yeah, that was true for a lot of, like, even in World War II. Like if you couldn't send all your children to war, you had to have a family left. And in Sparta, you didn't go to. You did go to war if things got bad enough, but it was supposed to be, you're supposed to have children. You're supposed to have a son right away to replace you. This is the benefit of a classic education, not a standard one. Yes, I went to Catholic schools. I went to Catholic schools, and till this day, I could still give a lecture on the French Revolution. I had a wonderful education, great education. And I taught in public schools, and I'll tell you, homeschool your kid. All right, so now Alexander's looking at this assembled army. This is Parmenio. Parmenio, I love Parmenio. Parmenio is a real he's a classic. He's a real person. Alexander and Parmenio were buddies, and Parmenio was older than him, and he was an advisor to Philip, and now he's an advisor to Alexander. And Parmenio was the lieutenant, and Alexander, so he ran the left flank of the companion cavalry, the Alexander's pony riders, and Alexander rode on the right. And he trusted Parmenio, and Parmenio never let him down. But once the empire was defeated, once Darius was taken, and he conquered all of the Persian Empire, Parmenio was like, "We're done. Let's go back now. You've won." And he started to phase out Parmenio because he was the old school, and Alexander would start replacing him with younger people who were, not even Macedonians, because he wanted to continue going on. And the old school was just like, the whole purpose of this army in this whole campaign was to protect the homeland from Persian invasion. We succeeded. Let's go home. And so he started like setting Parmenio up for failure, and then Parmenio like retired. It's kind of like a ignominious end to a great career. Children desperately need to have classic stories like this told to them. We have a gaping hole in our current. Yeah, you're absolutely 100% right, John. Wasn't the Spartan thing mothers told where the sons like either come back with? Yeah, because the Spartans, the hoplon, the shield, was big and heavy, and and the shield, the Spartans revered their shields. You could go into an old Spartan warrior's house, and they said that the shield was always given a place of honor. Like swords and helmets, they said they would be used to prop open doors, but the shield, because that protected them, that was the key to their victory. they learned to trust the shield because 50% of their body was covered by the guy on, I forget if it's the left or the right. I don't remember. But you had to trust your brother, the guy standing next to you, to protect. You had to trust the guy next to you with to protect your life as well as his own. And that shield was a symbol of that trust. Yes. So if you ran away, this was a big freaking bronze shield. You couldn't run away. So if you came back with your shield, that meant you were victorious. If you came back without your shield, that meant you ran away. So that was the whole thing. The come back with your shield or on it. So if you were killed, they would take this shield, lay your body on it, and carry the shield like a casket. Yep. Past Masterson is agreeing with John Porton. Yeah, I love this. I love the comments. Thank you guys. I got to wake up earlier and drink more coffee, so I'm all ready. So now this is the famous battle of Galgamea, where they said that Darius was killed in this battle, and then I think they made up a story that Alexander found him, and they actually had a talk before he died. I don't know how true that is. That just sounds like something that is wish fulfillment. So I think Darius was just killed. So now this is where the Greeks, this is where now the old Greeks, the Macedonians, the backbones of Alexander's army is starting to feel fatigue. And now they're going into India, and they have they always portray this, that the elephants were grabbing and slaughtering and smashing. The truth is that you just rode these elephants, and the elephants would just walk through your phalanx. You know what I mean? It was just guys with shields, and the elephants just would just walk through them and break your ranks. It's not like that they were invincible monsters like Oliphants from the Lord of the Rings. Just what were guys with spears going to do against elephants just walking through your ranks? And supposedly they scared the horses. So the ponies that the Alexandrian army rode, they would smell the elephants from far away, and they would lose their nerve. They just looked at them as big, gigantic horses, and they were terrified of them. So you had to train your horses to be used to elephants, and that was it. So so this is just poetic license of the battles. So here we have like the aftermath of everything. The fights going on, and so what we have now is, this is now Philip. Philip is now dressing like a Persian, and this is kind of alienating his men. And what does he do here? Is it on this page? But I'll talk about it over here. So Alexander is now telling his people, we are uniting the world. We are spreading the Hellenistic culture and that's what he did. Alexander, one of the most influential people in history, because he took Greek culture and he spread it to India. And because of that, Roman culture, we wouldn't be America today if not for Alexander the Great. I really do believe that he spread this Hellenistic culture, and he's founded cities that, there's Alexandria in Egypt. He founded something like 14 cities named Alexandria all over the empire. He actually conquered Afghanistan, founded a city named Alexandria in Afghanistan, and then left. And then he came back to Afghanistan, found out that the governors were corrupt, and he executed them. So I just imagine that Alexander was executing governors for like overtaxing and wasting the money. He was like that. So one of the things that he did was he married Roxanne. He got this idea, I'm going to marry Roxanne. Now, some people say that Alexander was homosexual, some people say whatever. I don't know. I wasn't there. People like to tell stories. That was the Greek thing, the Greeks, the boy lovers stuff. I think that was just part of the culture. But, if all the Greeks were homosexual, like they said, then they would have died out. But so he marries Roxanne, and this is the uniting of the Persian world and the Greek world. And he wants to make a new people. And it says, Alexander does not wed alone. 11,000 Macedonian soldiers take Persian brides in the same ceremony. So he's telling the the old school Macedonians that these are now us. We are the same people. So, in a certain way, like this kind of ticked off a lot of the old school Macedonians, like these are barbarians, and Alexander's like, they're not barbarians anymore. That we are one country, and he encouraged, like, a lot of the soldiers retired and lived there and rose families. Those of you who were injured or whatever, they stayed, never went back to Macedonia. He was encouraging me to move back. He wanted to make one people. So Europe touches Asia, and let us both be as one. And then they never had, that was his big weakness, is he never had an heir. His troops are all asking to go home, yet Alexander studies maps as if he wants to take us deeper into Asia. Now, when he made it to the Indus River, Alexander, from what I heard, from what I learned in college, Alexander didn't know how big the world was. He was a Greek. So when he made it to the Indus River, he thought that was it. He thought the world was conquered. And he says, look, Cletus, if I could penetrate a little more into India, I've gone further than even Hercules, but you won't take your Macedonians. The Macedonians, like, we're leaving. So now his army is made up of recruits that he got since his defeat of the Persian army, like Parmenius and all of them. They're going home. And Alexander does one of his, he sulks. He sits in his tent. That was like one of his tactics, that he would sit in his tent and until the army would be shamed and then come out and rejoin him. But at this point, he sits in his tent and then dies. He succumbed to malaria. And then I love this. My men must, Alexander, there's nothing left to it. And then the story goes on over here. He goes, if you're dying, who do you leave your empire to? And he goes, to the strongest. And he dies. And this is the big problem with Alex. So the Alexandrian Empire only existed in the lifetime of Alexander. When he died, it was broken up among his generals. You have the Seleucids under the Seleucid dynasty, under the Ptolemies in Egypt, and why can't I think the end? This is going to drive me nuts. But it was divided up in 3 or 4, and that was just like a chaotic period. But they were all Greek. They were all Hellenistic. So it was divided up into the Antigonids. That's it. The Antigonids, the Seleucids, and I can't remember who ruled. But in Egypt now, he installed the Ptolemies. So Alexander's brother and Alexander's little sister, Ptolemy and Cleopatra, they ruled in Egypt. 14 generations. And they one of the things that Alexander was big on was you take the cultures of the conquered people. You don't dismiss them. So he's trying to blend like a new culture. So he paid when he conquered a city, he paid homage to their gods and wouldn't let the soldiers sack. That was like a big thing. The soldiers would come into a city, sack, rape, pillage. Alexander wouldn't let them do that. He's like, this is mine now. You're not taking my stuff. We just conquered this. This is all mine. You don't steal from me. So the soldiers would get paid and they would move on. And the people are like, wow, he's just leaving us alone. So it inspired loyalty. So, this guy came in, he kicked out the Persians. He paid homage to our gods. He left us alone. My daughter's not getting raped. This isn't so bad. I'm going to go back to the farm, and that's the way Alexander kept loyalty. So, and then when he found out that the governors were being corrupt, he executed the governors, so I don't know, not that bad. So when he found out that the Egyptian kings like married their siblings to keep, so that the riches wouldn't leave the family. Ptolemy marries Cleopatra, and 14 generations later, we got the famous Cleopatra and Julius Caesar. So there you go. So by all rights, the Cleopatra of history, Augustus wrote about her, saw her, and said that her hair was thin, she had an overbite, she had one eyebrow, she wasn't much to look at. But she wore a lot of makeup, she wore a wig, and she was charming. And you told her she was beautiful because Egypt fed the Roman Empire, because it had 2 harvests a year because of the regularity of the Nile River, where the Tigris and the Euphrates they used to say that they were female rivers because they would just flood unpredictably and cause devastation. That Father Nile was male. It was predictable. You know, you could create a calendar, which is why the Egyptians invented the idea of paradise in the afterlife, and the Babylonians invented the concept of hell in the afterlife. So anyway, um, this may be the most historically accurate examination of a comic book I've ever seen. I'm guessing the writer of the book didn't know all of his. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going. I'm just going to say he didn't have time, and keep in mind this was pledged for little children. So this is like, to me, this is perfect. This does exactly what it was set out to do. It was to teach little kids a big history, and and then it was tied into a major motion picture at the time. So I think this is excellent. I think this is well done. You don't need to go into all the details. This is for a 10-year-old boy, and then the 10-year-old boy like me gets excited and learns the rest of it. You got to start somewhere. So I'm not going to say yeah. Once Cleopatra hooked up with Caesar, thus was invented the Caesar salad. Yeah. And they had a child named Caesarion. So Alexander, had he lived and secured the empire, had a kid with Roxanne that ruled, the whole world would be different. But and then we had the the Antigonids, the Seleucids, and why can't I remember the name of the petty empire, the petty kingdoms that ruled. So at one point in college, I wrote a play. That's going to drive me nuts. I can't remember the name of the play, and it was set in this period when the generals were all amassing to war and fighting to, they were going to go fight amongst themselves and reconquer everybody. They were friends under Alexander, but now they're enemy. And it was set in that period. I got to look it up. The next issue is Elmer Fudd. I don't know if you're joking or not, but it's probably true. There's another issue I've got to look for. It's the Trojan War. I got to look through these movie classics or the 4-color comics and get some of these issues. They're really good. They're really, really good. I like them. So there you go. This was today's history lesson and comic book. As normal now. I'll stay live until the chat dies down. Anybody want to say anything? Oh, Marcus said it's true. He looked it up. That's great. Oh, as I bump into the tripod. So, do you like this format better? I'm using my my chat cam over here because I wanted my hands free to make my coffee and stuff like that. So I think I'll do this from now on for Sunday Comics. This worked out better than I thought. You see there's the screen up there, but I'm just glad that that's not there. That would have driven me crazy. So anybody want to say anything? Anybody want to comment? This book was written by Paulus Newman. Yeah, I know, that's that guy. Drawn by Alberto. Yeah, I said that at the beginning. I was sold on this because I was told that it was John Buscema art and Alexander the Great, so it was a no-brainer. Once I got it, I looked it up because the art didn't quite look like John Buscema, and I'm thinking that's probably some other inker, or maybe it was the beginning of his career. I don't know, but so I was sad to see that in one compendium it was mislabeled and given credit to John Buscema, but the John Buscema historians say that it's not, that it was Alberto Giolitti, but it was still great. It was still great. I really enjoyed it. I thought the art was great. I think they did a good job. They made it look a little bit more towards the movie, and this original movie, I don't know. I'm that it's not as accurate as the Greeks looked, but whatever. It's like, again, it's a great touchstone. Oh, okay. I didn't know this. Marcus Kelligou tells me Giolitti drew Star Trek for Dell and Gold Key. Cool. You see, this is a big void in my comic book knowledge. Dell. I really gotta learn more about them. So anything anybody want to ask me at 2:00 today? I'm gonna have a live chat with Steve Rude, Steve the Dude Rude. This was the only time he was available, so so I'll be doing 2 streams today, and I'm gonna go back to Monday music for Monday, and then I'm still doing the long box videos, but I just read Fiendish by Irene Stretchy. I know I'm murdering her name. I'm really excited to do a showcase on that. I was so excited I stayed up an extra 2 hours just thinking about that comic book. I haven't been that excited about a comic book in a long time. She's going to come on my channel sometime in November. I'm excited. I really want to talk to her about that comic. I really, really liked it. It was one of the best crowdfunded comics I ever read so far. So I still got 10 people in the chat. My philosophy is to end on a high note. So rather than just let this dwindle and die down and bore everybody, I'll just give everybody a couple of minutes to come up with some comments. I'm betting that Newman the writer just cranked this up. Yeah, I think he probably just crib note the movie and threw it in the comic, but it did what it was supposed to do. This was to get little kids, most likely boys, interested in history and to sell comics. So, all right, everybody, looks like I'm going to wind down now. Thanks a lot. I'll see you. Come back 2:00. I'll have a live chat with Steve Rude, the dude. All right, bye, everybody.